Hello, my name is Jim Burley from Scottish Wood, and today we are going to have a brief chat about sycamore. We are going to look at how to saw it, how to season it, how to kiln it, how to finish it, and a little bit about how to use it. And we're also going to look briefly at the tree itself in Scotland. This is a short film produced by ASHS, the Association of Scottish Hardwood Sawmillers, and we're filming at the Scottish Wood Yard in Fife. Sycamore is a beautiful timber and it has a wide range of uses. Here we see some fresh sawn boards, and you can see that typical lovely creamy white that you get with sycamore. The colour in sycamore tends to be quite uniform across the width of a board, with the sapwood as non-distinguishable from the heartwood, unlike most other homegrown timbers. As the timber ages, it will lose this creamy whiteness and take on a darker hue. And in bigger and older trees, you often get this colouring in the centre of the log, something that the mainstream industry would normally discard, but actually something we love to see here at Scottish Wood. Often you get a bit of spalting in this darkened centre, and this can lead to some stunning colour, contrast and effect. These would probably be some of our most popular boards here at Scottish Wood. These logs have all come from trees that were blown down in Storm Arwen at the end of November 2021. They were growing in a small hilltop woodland a few miles north of Berwick-upon-Tweed, and more than half of this lovely little deciduous woodland was flattened by the storm. It was a scene of devastation, the likes of which I've not seen before. But we can see here that discoloration in the centre of some logs, which we're pleased to see here, but many others in the industry would not be. Some more boards that have just been cut. You'll notice some staining encroaching in from the ends of these boards. This is caused by fungal growth attracted to the sugars in the sap, and this is why sycamore should be cut down only in the winter months when the sap flow is low. In Scotland, this is considered to be from November through to January. Any later than that, and it's likely that the sap will have begun to rise again, and so staining will be a problem, and that pristine, creamy whiteness, typical of fresh-cut sycamore, will be lost. This doesn't necessarily make it an undesirable board. It can still be attractive, but as a supplier of kiln-dried hardwoods, at Scottish Wood we wouldn't want too many boards with stain. And as I said earlier, these were blown down at the end of November when the sap was low, so this level of staining is light, but it is there because we've left it a whole 7 months before cutting these logs into boards. Ideally, we would have had all of these cut within a few weeks of them coming into the yard. But life isn't always that simple. However, this level of staining and the amount of discoloration is low. If it had been summer felled, then the staining in the tree would be much more and would be throughout the length of the board, however soon it was cut on the saw. And here we see that darkened centre again. And remember, this is different to the staining I was just talking about. These have come from an old tree and quite a rough one in terms of quality. It was probably an upper length in the stem rather than the base, the butt. But look at how beautiful these boards are going to be from a log that would normally be considered just as firewood. In front of us here we see some air drying beech and ash, drying in the usual way, pinned or stickered, using narrow strips of wood that separate and support each layer so that the air can move freely between the boards, drying them as it goes. We can't do this with sycamore. Sycamore is more capricious, and here we end rear each board. This avoids a problem we would otherwise get with staining caused by the stickers or the pins, the bits of wood separating each layer of boards. It's called sticker staining, and that stain penetrates right into the wood and doesn't come away with planing, and it really spoils the appearance of a nice finished board. Once end reared for a while, this allows the surface of the board to dry, and it can then be stacked and stickered later on in the usual way before going into the kiln. Here we see some finished and planed boards. Sycamore is considered a relatively easy timber to work. It cuts and planes and finishes well, and is quite stable and less inclined to move or warp when subjected to moisture changes. It has a range of uses such as fine furniture, kitchens, internal finishings, skirtings, facings, doors and so on. And you can also get figure in sycamore, known as rippled sycamore or fiddleback sycamore. And this gives an attractive pattern and is popular in the production of musical instruments and some fine furniture. You can also get tremendous grain patterns and luster around big knots and forks in a board. Sycamore is a variety of maple coming from the Acer family, and it is commonly found across Scotland. Here is a typical example of a sycamore tree growing in the local woodlands. It's a reasonable diameter and fairly good in terms of timber quality. There's evidence of small epicormic branches that have been growing on the stem, and you can see evidence of this with these patterns on the bark, called eyes or oysters. Each of these will have a small knot in the timber underneath, but in this case they will only be small and probably just add to the character of the board. Sycamore can grow at quite close spacing in a woodland. This little group is closely spaced for a hardwood. They're all self-sown, as is the case with the majority of sycamore trees in Scotland. But you can see this little patch of trees here will yield quite a heavy crop for a hardwood. And that is why good quality sycamore used to be considered one of the better, if you like, cash crops for a hardwood in Scotland. And that is for two reasons. First, it can grow at close spacing, leading to a heavy crop. And second, its rotation can be as low as 75 years. Compare that to oak, for example, a rotation of more like 140 years in Scotland, almost double the time, and roughly half as many trees per hectare. And I say used to, because up until recently there was a strong demand for Scottish sycamore across Europe. The sycamore grown in Scotland is considered some of the best quality in Europe. Why that market dwindled away to almost nothing over the last 20 years is a question I can't answer. Another example, here this time it's a garden tree grown with more space and more light, and so you get more branching, rather than the long, slender stem that you'll get when grown in a woodland environment, with competition for space and light. Here you get a stem where only the bottom 8 feet or so is of timber quality. And here is one that is blown down in a storm several years ago. Sad to see it left in the woods like this. No good for timber now, it'll be completely stained through and probably on the underside rot setting in. Sadly, this becomes the fate of many of our hardwoods, left where they fall, or turned into firewood because the economics of recovering single trees like this from the woodlands just don't stack up. And a log on the saw getting cut into boards. This log is getting cut into quite wide boards. We call this method of cutting through and through, and it means the natural edge or waney edge will be left on both edges. The natural edge on sycamore can look attractive and it finishes well, not necessarily the case with all of our Scottish hardwoods. The sawdust that comes from this process goes to feed our large biomass boiler, providing heat for our 3 wood drying kilns along with 3 more buildings. And the system can cope with this fresh sawdust, so almost no waste. Here we have kiln dry sycamore boards, quite stained, going through a parallel edger. These boards are destined for skirtings and facings in a house in Mull. And sycamore, like I said earlier, it planes well. But we do get a problem with sycamore with these long shavings that you don't get from the other hardwoods. These long shavings easily block up a dust extraction system, and that just causes downtime and general irritation. But yes, sycamore is a great and a versatile timber, and it often gets undervalued and underappreciated in a woodworking context. We process quite a lot of it here at Scottish Wood, and it's a popular one with the customers. Great, well I hope you found that useful. If you'd like any more information about hardwoods, how to saw them, that's primary processing, secondary processing, that's machining, seasoning, kiln drying, how to grade it, how to value it, and also how to grade and value hardwood logs, then go to the ASHS website. That's ashs.co.uk. Good. Thanks for watching.